Hello and welcome to Switch Scheme, and today I have a Switch 2 that we're going to be doing an unboxing for. Now, I did not do a pre-order. I'm here in the US, and thanks to the tariffs, pre-ordering got delayed, so I was unlucky and was not able to get one when they were finally reopened, but I was able to contact my local GameStop literally yesterday on release at, I think, noon, and I said, hey, do you by chance have any? And the guy on the phone said, I have 4 left. I stopped streaming, I ran over there, quickly got in line, last one, literally the last one. The guy goes, you have my last one, number 50. And there you see the number 50 is on the bottom. And I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And of course the guy behind me starts crashing out. You know, why the hell did I drive this far? I drove here for nothing. Are you serious? Are you effing serious? You told me you had him on when I called. And I'm sitting there going, you know, that little awkward kid at the party, like, oh shit. But yeah, so we're gonna do an unboxing of the Switch 2. I'm gonna go ahead and take the camera down to my desk so we can take a look at it together. And I'm also gonna compare it to the Switch 1 in terms of size, the ergonomic feel and all that. Now, just so you know, I have already opened this on stream just to put the screen protector on, to charge it, and put a couple games on it to make sure it's working. So you will see some things that obviously a brand new one won't have, but I'll obviously address that when we get there, all right? Let's go down to the table. All right, guys, now that we're down to the table, let's take a look at the differences in box size. As you can see, this is the OLED box. Next to our Switch 2 box, the OLED box vertically is taller. However, when it comes to width, the Switch 2 box does have it there. If you do plan on displaying these on a shelf or on top of like a bookshelf or some sort of case, just keep in mind that the Switch 1 OLED is taller vertically than this one, so you cannot put the Switch 1 in front of the Switch 2. The Switch 2 will have to be in front so it can actually be seen. Let's go ahead and get rid of the Switch 1 box and let's go over to the Switch 2. All right, so the Switch 2 box, like I said, a little hefty. It is got some weight to it. On the bottom, you just have your standard just information for shipping and all your little rules, what's in the box, all the little accessories you expect to be in there. And then this giant sticker for number 50, because this was the 50th console at my GameStop. Therefore, it was the last one. They ordered 50 for people who didn't pre-order. Let's get it open. Here we go. As you can see, the console is right here on top. This has been the cause of a lot of problems for people. See, what's happening, and I think it was in New York, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. What was happening is people were taking this box and saying, hey, you've purchased this. Let me staple your receipt right here in the front, so when you go to security, they can see that you've purchased the Switch and you can leave. Well, look at what's right underneath that spot. The console. So what's happening is people are stapling the actual screen, either causing cracks, breaks, or punctures, and that is stupid. So could Nintendo have put a piece of foam or something on here to protect the screen? Sure. Did they anticipate people stapling receipts to the front of this box? Probably not, because that's not normal human activity. But anyways, just be aware, if you do get a console and you see someone staple this, open it right there and check to make sure your console's okay, because it likely will have damage. All right, so here you go. Here we have, obviously we have the Switch itself. I do have the original OLED right here next to me so I can show you a size comparison. Let's set that down. And then we have the 2 new Joy-Cons. I will say I do like these Joy-Cons. Like I said in the earlier intro, I did already open this to charge it and get a couple games on it to make sure it wasn't a lemon. So it's searching right now. And then we have the red one. And then we have the interior packaging. We do have a little slot here that opens up, and in here you have your HDMI cable. It's supposed to be some fancy schmancy HDMI cable. They say that it's not going to work as well as the old Nintendo Switch HDMI cable, but I mean, it's an HDMI cable. I don't know anything about the throughput when it comes to speeds and stuff with these. I know obviously there is better technologies, but is it really that much better? I don't know. Let's set this aside because that's something I don't need. Here you have your wrist wraps and bumpers. I'll show you how these work later. And then down here, let me remove that box. Down here we have the controller that you attach your Joy-Cons to if you're not buying the Pro controller. I'll go over this with the comparison to the other one. I have the other one right here, and I'm on the fence of which one I like more, and I'll explain, but yep, here's this. In here we have the charging brick. This boy is a brick, all right. It is, again, which seems to be the theme with this Switch 2, vertically shorter than the other Switch charger. However, it is fatter width-wise. But one thing that you will notice immediately is it's not an attached cable. It is a C port that you can take in and out. So if you forget your cord, or if you have to store your cord separately, or you just find it easier to have the cord stored separately, you can do so. And of course, it is embossed with Nintendo on the side. Here you have your charging cord. Here's one thing I will say. I know we've been giving Nintendo a lot of crap lately about video game prices and stuff like that, but hey, at least they can include the 10-cent charging cord so I can actually play the console and use it, unlike Apple when I'm spending $1,300 for a stupid phone and you can't give me a charging cord. Bro, come on. And then last in here we have the dock. Let me get the box out of the way. And then here we have the dock. I will say I like this dock a lot. It is very sleek looking on the table. There we go. So it does look really nice. It obviously has the Nintendo 2 embossment on it. The back has more of a curved look to it. It does obviously take up more space because it is wider, because it also has to fit the wider screen, but it's not obtrusive on your countertop at all. It does obviously have its internal fans. I'm assuming these are going to be exhaust, right? Heat rises out, and these would be the intake for the fans. Other than that, pretty standard. It does have a couple USB slots here, and then you obviously pop this off, which I know a lot of people are saying, why does this have to pop off? You're going to lose this just like any other battery cover your entire life, but it does give you the option for AC adapter, right, for your C charge, your C port, the HDMI out, and then a LAN for online play. So everything you've come to expect in a dock is here, which is great. And then, like I said, it has the intake fan cutouts down there. So that's the dock. The dock is a dock. There's really nothing special about it. Let's set it aside. Obviously, you do have your reading materials. I didn't put this back in the box. This is going to be in there with the HDMI cable. If you buy the Mario Kart version, the Mario Kart code tag will be on top of this inside your box. Next, let's take a look at these. So here you have the little controller. Obviously, here are the little Joy-Cons for the original. I keep saying little because everything in comparison now is little. And then here you have the new one. As you can see, when it comes to these two Joy-Con controllers, right, the original OLED is shorter, smaller, not as wide. This one has a higher vertical profile. It is wider. But the one thing I did notice is this has like a cutout with this rounded edge to it. This is just pure flat. There's no rounded edge to it, nothing. So that's going to be something you'll notice right away when you put these Joy-Cons on, right? They sit snugly in between the rounded edge to the center part, and it kind of gives you a nice grip. However, this always felt really small. I think one of the biggest complaints when it came to the original Joy-Con controller is that this just feels tiny, right? This feels really small in your hands. So here's the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, nothing really special. They're Joy-Cons, come as what you expect. The only big difference here is going to be the mount sensor here, and then obviously the bumpers are much bigger. If you take a look at the original bumpers here, these two little white dots, look at the size difference between those. It's a lot easier to play games with just holding onto this Joy-Con itself. They just slide right into this little Joy-Con controller. Boom, you're ready to go. Like I said, this whole snapping system that it's using now does feel a lot better. The magnets are very strong and they do feel really nice. Now, when I compare this controller to this controller, and if you were to ask me which one is more comfortable, I'm gonna say this one's too small, but it feels nicer in the palms because this is one solid piece. This one feels the right size, but because of this gap here, it's not as comfortable on the palms. Now, this isn't an edge, it's not sharp, but it is a straight edge going down this way, right? Because it's not curved like this one, and you do feel that in your palm. So I don't know. This is fine. Obviously, this will work for a few hours of gaming, but if you're serious about gaming on your Switch, you're either gonna just use it in handheld or you're gonna get a Pro controller. I don't necessarily like these to begin with, but it does suffice, especially if you're just looking for something quick. It is comfortable, it is bigger, which is nice. I have small hands in comparison to most people, so for me, this little tiny thing was perfectly fine, but I do recognize that this was small for a lot of people. Let's go ahead and set this aside. We'll look at those a little bit later, and let's take a look at the Switch itself. I'm gonna look at the little bumpers things when I look at the Joy-Cons here in a second. So the Switch itself, right, here's the screen. And then here is the OLED for comparison. Yeah, that is significantly smaller. It is really nice being able to see these two side by side. And then if I stack this on top, line this up, that's the size difference that you're looking at. right? Being told it's a 7:9 screen or whatever, being told these things sounds nice, but seeing it physically, seeing that difference in size, obviously there's going to be a huge group of us that are visual learners. Being told it's a 7.9-inch screen doesn't mean anything to me. It's just a bigger screen. You can kind of see the right there, you can kind of see the bevel line there, and then along here. So it's not screen to edge, right? This one's a little bit more screen to edge. You can see the line here, and you can see that the line is here, right? This is almost a finger width. This is not. Not that big of a deal, because when you turn it on, which we're gonna do real quick, because I want to show you. Let me flip her back around. Now you can see that edge there, right? And then if I turn on the original OLED, right, that edge isn't as pronounced, but you still have a bigger screen overall. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people are going to be questioning is, okay, so how much of the actual screen is bigger? That's how much of the actual screen is bigger because of this beveled line. So just keep that in mind, right? There is a little, in my opinion, there's a little bit of being finicky with the numbers in terms of this being a much bigger screen. It is bigger. It's not that much bigger though, because of these beveled lines on the side. Let's take a look at these Joy-Cons real quick, because I do have to snap them onto the controller, or onto the Switch, right? Let me take out these bumpers. The bumpers are kind of nice. They are obviously your handholds, your wrist guards, so that you don't accidentally yeet thing outside the window, but these help with the mouse control. So you take it, and you always want to start from bottom and just slide it in, and it pops right on. And now you have a mouse. This does work with Cyberpunk, and it does work with shooters, so I have a feeling the Switch might become the go-to console for shooters for a while if the mouse controls stay tight and they stay really good. The problem with console gaming as a whole is sticks are not as accurate as a mouse and keyboard. That does have its drawbacks though, because you do have the compensation on console, so you do lose out on that if you start using a mouse. But you know, which do you prefer? Taking them off, super easy. There's a little lip here, you just pop it off, it comes right off, and you set it aside. I will say these feel a little bit finicky, like this could break. The plastic is strong. I'm putting a little bit of pressure here, but I do feel like if a kid were to play and they had this, and in their rage of losing a game, they squeeze this too hard, this is gonna snap in half. I can see a lot of parents needing to replace these. Your kid should not be doing that. Your kid should be more well behaved, but that's just the way it is. Kids are gonna kid, right? We know that. As for the console itself, right, putting these on is really easy. Snap, boom, very simple. I do like that system. It's very, very easy to get them on and off, right? You have the little buttons right here, pop off, slide on. It's so easy. Console itself, right, you have your exhaust for your fans, you have the game slot, C port, audio jack, volume buttons, power button on the bottom. You also have that C button to go ahead and charge the system. On the back, we do have a new kickstand. The kickstand is metallic, which is nice, which means it's not likely to break. But this is also where you're going to put your micro SD Express. Make sure you get an Express card for your Switch 2. You will not be able to play your Switch 2 games if you do not get an Express card. We have to make that very clear, because people are going to buy the wrong one and be frustrated when it doesn't work. Speakers are on the bottom. So like I said, speakers sound perfectly fine. Overall, the system is very, very good. I am happy with the purchase. The only thing that I think that I'm kind of bummed out with is the launch library. I mean, it's fine, but with such a huge library on Switch 1, you would think they would have more ready for Switch 2, because it's so easy for them to have ports. Obviously, it all depends on how well the system sells, right? If this system sells like the Switch 1, this game's gonna have ports and everything up the yazoo, just like that one did. Backwards compatibility was a big question for a lot of people. So far, I haven't had any issues, right? I have Mario Kart World. Obviously, I just wanted to make sure it worked. I did try a limited run physical game, Metal Slug Tactics, because I wanted to see, do limited run games work, or just basically taking a digital game and sticking it on a cartridge. So that way you can play it. So I was able to get this to work though, so that's great. And then I did test a import. This is a Japanese import Gundam. That worked perfectly fine. And then obviously I put on Cyberpunk and played a little bit of that. Now, as you can see, the game does right out the gate advise you to use mouse controls for aiming. It also tells you all the different types of controls, motion patterns, using the touch screen, and then gyroscope mode. So all of the things that we're used to, like the gyroscoping stuff for first-person shooters, is here, which is nice. But it does obviously add that mouse control. Cyberpunk, so far I did play a little bit. It ran perfectly fine. I had no issues with the performance. When it comes to that fuzzy edging that everything has on the original Switch because of the resolution change, there is a little tiny bit, especially around more specific details like the hands and things, but it looked significantly better than the original Switch would have. The original Switch would have had everything looking like it got smeared in Vaseline. This one's not as bad. So I will say already out the gate, I'm really excited to play newer titles on this. The last thing we're going to look at are the games. The reason I want to look at the games is I was kind of surprised the Switch 2 are exactly the same size. And I like that because it means I don't need to get a new bookshelf. Everything's gonna fit perfectly fine in the same shelving. It'll all fit together when you put them side by side like this. In your shelf, you can tell which one is the Switch 2, right? It has the shorter 2, and this one has the longer red section. Now, obviously, what you're noticing here is I have spine on mine. This is what they normally look like, right? This is the Switch that we're all used to, right? This red spine that looks kind of generic, and it really looks boring on a shelf. I buy custom spines on Etsy, so the guy makes these spines so that way I can put them on my Switch games. So like here's Metal Slug Tactics, here's Unicorn Overlord. But I will say one thing I'm happy about, the Switch 2 is remedying that. They're going back to giving us proper custom spines. So no longer do I have to buy a custom spine to get rid of this red kind of eyesore. I now can just tell what games are by the spine itself, right? It actually is a full artwork all the way around now rather than it being broken up like it was in the original. So that's great. There is one thing I don't like about these cases, and that is if you open up one of these, right, you can see this really pretty artwork that they put on the inside, kind of just something fun just for you as the one who owns the game to just be like, oh, that's some cool art, right? It's like a unique little thing that the game can have, because obviously it can either do that or it can do something like that where it's only one side where they have the warranty information, or even worse, they could just have nothing. This code doesn't work, don't try it. I just like to save my inserts. Right, it could have nothing in it, and whatever. If you don't want to put anything on the inside, that's fine. My issue is with these new cases being red, they did it, but it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, you can see the outlines, but if I were to take this and pull it out a little, look at how colorful and pretty that looks as kind of like a poster for the inside of your case. But you can't really tell because they decided to make the cases red, so it doesn't really have the same oomph. But what it does tell me is, imagine you could just put this in a Switch 1 case and then you could see it. With Cyberpunk, they didn't do that, so it's kind of an irrelevant point. So I wouldn't worry about it. But that's just one of the small minor things I've noticed when it comes to the Switch 2 games is I don't like this red plastic. It really does, you know, obfuscate your ability to see these type of artwork on the background. These are kind of like little mini posters, and they're kind of fun when you open the case to get a little bit of fun, like lore or just some artwork, just something to say, hey, here's this awesome game you're about to play, as opposed to just blank. But I mean, when you look at the difference between this and this one, like you can see how much easier it is to see all the art here rather than, kind of makes me think of like going back to the 80s when you had to wear those red and blue glasses for 3D. That's what this reminds me of. But that is what it is. That's a choice that they've made. You know, we went to $80 for this and they can't even let us see the artwork on the actual case itself, so whatever. That being said, you guys, that's pretty much the Switch 2. It is the system you expect it to be. It's literally just a Switch with better hardware. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing great about it. If you have an original Switch and you don't necessarily know if upgrading's right for you, I don't think it's necessary to upgrade right now, especially if your library on the original Switch is really large and works perfectly fine in your mind, then there's no need. But it is the new shiny toy. It does have game support for things that are not out yet. I know a lot of people were upset about game keys, but look, game keys are basically the same thing as buying a game digitally. The only difference is you can now have it on your wall as a physical too. I don't understand the hate behind game keys at all. I understand that, yes, you're still buying digital, and a lot of us don't like buying digital, so when you go and buy a physical game, you hope to actually get the physical game on the cartridge so you don't have issues with them taking down the eShop or anything. I get all that. But again, that's no different than you going in the eShop and buying a game. So like if I go to my game library for all my virtual games and I look at all my digital games, right? My favorite game on my Switch, for the most part, now obviously the Unicorn Overload's up there too, but like Evil Tonight's one of my favorite digital games on the Switch. The problem is there's no physical for it. Whether I bought a game key for that or not, it makes no difference. I still only own that digitally. So if they did give me the option to buy the game key, would I? If I didn't already own it here? Sure, why not? Because then I at least could have a cool box art on my shelf. I just also own it digitally. I understand why a lot of people don't like it, especially when they're putting games on game key that are smaller than this, and this fit perfectly fine on the cart. Stupid. Other than that, you guys, that's pretty much it. That's the Switch 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this unboxing. I know I'm not one of them professionals with one of them nice cameras, but I wanted to at least show you what's in the box, what it looks like. First impression so far, like I said, runs great. I can play Cyberpunk without a lot of lag, and that's more than my old computer could do at the time when it first came out. My new computer can play it perfectly fine, but it is what it is. Anyways, if you guys like this video, drop a like, drop a comment, drop a sub if you want to see more. I'm going to be over streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/utinibikini, and hope to see you guys there. And as always, have a great day. Very red. Ready? Survey says. Yep, there's still bitterness.